Okay, let's get started because I want to make sure that Andrew gets to answer everybody's questions. My name is Alicia, and I am going to be helping proctor today's webinar. Our guest speaker today is Andrew Brightman, and he is our fitness expert as well as the owner of Resolute Fitness. Andrew, take it away.
Thank you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate it. First, I want to preface this entire meeting with, I don't usually look glossy. This is just my sunscreen. I didn't plan that. So before we get started, I want you guys, the viewers, to keep a couple things in mind as I walk through these questions, because some of the answers will pertain to those who are planning to weight train or exercise while they're making their new healthy food habit changes. And some of you may, for whatever reason, it just might not be practical to exercise in the same right to do while or in conjunction with their new diet changes. So things to keep in mind as you're listening to my answers. Are you planning on either starting a workout routine while you're making these diet changes? Or are you planning just simply to follow just a healthy diet adjustment and kind of just a nutrition lifestyle, okay? So those are the big things that I want you to keep in mind. Also, one more thing is I really want you to focus, guys, on your existing schedule. The biggest thing that I see as far as reasons why people fail diets is they are implementing or starting a nutrition plan that in no way, shape, or form coincides with a schedule that not only is impractical, but is not going to change anytime soon. So the biggest thing as I'm going through these questions is you have to ask yourself, what do I already have on my plate as far as concrete and fixed responsibilities, so that you can get a good idea as I'm referencing these answers, does this pertain to me or does this not, okay? So I will start with the first question. Should I be eating breakfast? Should I be eating breakfast? Which this kind of goes into it with one of the biggest questions I saw, intermittent fasting. Frequent or small meals, or an 18/6 or 16/8 intermittent fasting routine. Okay, so first what I want to do is I want to go over some of the pros and cons, the biggest things that you guys should consider about picking either multiple small meals or the intermittent fasting route. Pros, we'll start there. It is simply one of the most practical diets for those who pretty much have every minute of their day already spoken for. And the idea of, we'll just say, for example purposes, a surgeon, somebody who needs to scrub in and scrub out and doesn't have time to just pull almonds out of their pocket in the middle of surgery or something like that to make sure they get their meal time. Okay, so intermittent fasting is an extraordinarily convenient system for those who truly have an extremely busy schedule that doesn't allow for either compartmentalized meals or eating multiple times a day, because that's just a recipe for disaster, if not immediately, at some point, regardless of the results that you guys are having. Your schedule, since that probably won't change, is going to clash with the diet, and it's just not realistic or practical, okay? So although it is very easy to follow, some of you who have a lot more time on your hands and have, well, just more availability to either cook the food or have access to the opportunity where you can take multiple breaks or small breaks, the intermittent fasting diet probably wouldn't necessarily be the best choice. Another pro is everyone deals with palatability with foods, and with the intermittent fasting system, and I'll back up a little bit. 18/6 means 18 hours of true fast, followed by 6 hours of window where nutrient sources are consumed. Or the more approachable, and I would say more widely used, is the 16/8. Same sense, 16 hours of fast, 8 hours of consumed nutrients. It is extremely easy to follow only because a lot of the diets and a lot of the recipes and a lot of the meals that you'll be eating on an intermittent fasting system, they allow for more calorically dense foods. This means more palatable meals. This means you're not necessarily dreading, choking down stuff that tastes like cat food. It's just more enjoyable in general. So by following an intermittent fasting system, because your focus is getting the same amount of nutrients or close to that you would on a normal diet that is spread out or dispersed uniformly throughout an entire day. So that means you might be able to eat pasta. That means you might be able to eat stuff with cheese on it. So if you are a finicky eater, we'll just say that, or if you are a foodie, the intermittent fasting system tends to be one that people enjoy more, because when you do get to eat, this stuff doesn't taste like cat food. So that's a huge pro. And with my clients who are either finicky eaters or they just can't stomach the healthier food sources dispersed throughout the day, it's just so much more approachable for them to follow something where they're only asked to eat maybe 2.5 meals in a very short period of time, because those meals can be extremely satiating. So that's a huge pro. One of the biggest pros that I would say that my clients reference. Big thing is helps control blood glucose. So after a certain window of time, usually the jury's still out on this, but it usually takes an individual about 5-ish to 6-ish, 7-ish days for the body to kind of get used to that metabolic sequence. So the body the metabolism rather, is a trainable entity. It can learn based on pattern, okay? So if you used to or are coming off of eating multiple times a day and then switching to the intermittent fasting sequence, I would say for the first 7 to 10 days, it's, cross the one, carry the two, it's gonna suck. Because you're gonna be hungry. You've trained or conditioned your metabolism to be eating more often, and as kind of a precursor, a preparatory response, the body will start to expect, well, what happened to breakfast? We usually do breakfast. And what happened to your lunch? We usually do lunch. So what you'll notice is you're going to be fighting a lot of these cravings. But understand this, the silver lining is that at the end of that 7 to 10 day-ish period, once the body has kind of relearned or has been reconditioned to not needing to work during those earlier hours during the day, those cravings, and when you're getting super hangry, that goes away. So that's actually what people really notice the biggest switch is. As soon as that body gets reconditioned to the intermittent fasting sequence, the cravings are gone. They really don't crave anything throughout the day. Also, with your blood glucose being in control, the cravings for the things that you used to just get really bad urges for, chocolate, sweets, stuff like that, goes away completely. If your blood glucose is low, if insulin is in check, you're not going to walk by the bakery section and just Jones for a donut. Okay, so it is, I would say most users of the clients that I do have adhering to the intermittent fasting sequence, they report that the things that used to be their kryptonite, the things that used to be just truly sources that they didn't have any control over whether or not they were able to eat them on a daily basis or not, goes away. And your actually taste buds go through a physiological change where when you do bring back a piece of fudge or a brownie or a cookie, it's actually less enjoyable, which is kind of an interesting thing. And I think a lot of people enjoy that too. Also, another big thing is it is not muscle sparing. So what intermittent fasting users also identify is that with an 18x6 or 16x8 sequence, you're not going to atrophy muscle. You're not going to lose muscle. And I think that's a big misconception with following this plan is if the food sources aren't coming in and if we're not feeding the muscle, that the natural tendency of the body would be muscle wasting. And that's not the case. With insulin levels being extremely low because of lower metabolic activity, the body is asked to do less during the day in that time. So it's not fetching for a fuel source, right? And what it does after using implementing the intermittent fast, it actually tends to pull from fat stores or existing fat stores. So it's choosing that as a fuel source over anything else, over the muscle rather. So that's another thing that a lot of the clients that I have love about it is they're actually able to, for those who weight train, circuit train, they're not noticing any muscle loss. So that's, I would say that's one of the biggest urban legends about intermittent fasting is that, oh, you know, if you're not eating, you're not feeding the muscle. That's complete BS, okay? Not real. Some of the cons. I would say the biggest ones are practicality. Now, for an intermittent fast to work, it is a merciless curriculum in that if life presents a scenario where you have a social soiree, you're out with friends, and you're only maybe 7 to 10 days into a fast, breaking that fast actually can result in fat storage because for so long or so many days or weeks, you've taught the body, hey, digestive system, hey, metabolism, go ahead and chill out all day. We're not going to need you to do anything. But when that circumstance presents itself, birthday party, social event, anything, an outing, where you all of a sudden change that, the body is not, it's not prepared to facilitate those incoming nutrients because for X amount of days and weeks, you've told it, you don't need to do a job. Hey, hang up your hat, relax, kick your feet up. So that's another issue with intermittent fasting is if, you know, for a lot of my clients that are, well, they just have jobs where they need to take clients out or they need to just network a lot. And generally that also coincides with being around a lot of food. The intermittent fasting system is very difficult because deviating from an intermittent fast in any way can result in actual metabolic damage. And certainly if you're doing it multiple times, if you're following it for 5 days and then for 2 straight days, all of a sudden you're eating lunch, body can't pick up on any predictable pattern. And the body basically needs that. It wants to get conditioned to a sequence and it wants to work for you. On the opposite end of the spectrum, so those individuals who are eating multiple times a day, what happens is, and what I hear a lot from my clients when I start with them is they say, Andrew, when I wake up in the morning, I'm just not hungry. I don't want to eat. And that is because for years, months, weeks, whatever, you've conditioned your metabolism to understand that it doesn't need to operate, it doesn't need to work in the morning, okay? But again, backing up to what I said earlier, because the metabolism is a trainable entity, it can learn based on pattern and behavior. If you teach it after, you know, in the form of multiple days, starting to just eat small, just nibble, as a preparatory response and as a precursor, you know, on days 5, 6, and 7, all of a sudden you'll wake up with this salivating appetite. You want food. And what that means is you've conditioned the body, or the metabolism rather, to expect or need to do work. You're asking it to do work. So going back to that concept of creating a pattern, intermittent fasting is not convenient and should not be followed by those who have either an unpredictable schedule, certainly in the form of not knowing if they have to go out for lunches with clients, or if in general, they're just a social individual. So that's a very difficult plan to follow, intermittent fasting, if, well, unless you live under a rock. So if you have a predictable schedule and you can kind of control when and what times you eat, it is an incredible diet to follow. It is extremely effective for fat loss because once the body switches over from understanding that it needs to use glucose as a primary fuel source, because that's always its first go-to, right? Once it understands that it doesn't necessarily need to use that as a primary fuel source and it can actually switch over into ketones or fats, you'll actually start pulling from your existing fat stores as a primary fuel source. Now, this is another stage that you have to kind of transition into. So once your body does make that switch, 7-ish to 14-ish days down the road, the body also has to learn how to make it work as effective as glucose, glycogen, which enters the mouth as carbohydrates. So you'll notice a little bit of a fog in that stage. This is, as I'm saying this, it kind of really sounds like a sucky diet, but once you get past those windows, those 2 big stages into switching into intermittent fasting, the mental clarity is unreal. The cravings are quite literally gone. But I would say the hardest part about starting an intermittent fasting system is simply that you're basically committing to the first 2 weeks being really, really sucky. But knowing and keeping in the back of your mind that after that stage passes, it's an awesome, awesome experience. You don't crave things. Quite literally, you really don't even feel like you're dieting, other than the fact that you aren't eating for a really long time. So the cravings go away. Those who have, their Achilles heel is like sweets, brownies, snacks, sugars, chocolates, all that stuff. I recommend intermittent fasting for those people, but as long as they can put up with the first 2 weeks of misery. Because once that switch happens, the stuff that used to be a staple, or the things that used to just be almost have control over your decision making with the sweets and the crap, it's gone. You'll all of a sudden feel a level of control that really you've never ever felt before. So it's actually pretty interesting for those who right now are like, I'm a sweets girl, or I'm a sweets guy. Like, it's really, really incredible. That's what all my clients report. Some of the medications, this one's kind of a smaller one, but if you are taking medications, a lot of doctors recommend that you do take it with food. And there can be, depending on the type of medication, there can be a little bit of complication or stomach aches or side effects that are associated with not eating while you are taking those medications at certain times of day. For instance, if the doctor prescribes you to take this at noon and this in the morning, but your intermittent fast calls for an 18/6 where you're starting to eat at 4 o'clock, that's going to suck a lot. Pros or cons, I really don't know that putting up with that, because that actually doesn't go away. The suckiness of taking a prescription medication when it is intended to be digested or accompanied with food, it'll just always suck, I promise. What else? I think that's pretty much it for the big bullet points for the intermittent fasting. So we will move on to the next question. Okay, vegan weight loss, okay? Vegan weight loss, and again, going back to those bullet points that I wanted you to keep in your head as you're interpreting or receiving my answers. One of them was, are you going to weight train, or do you plan to weight train, or really any form of exercise while you are adhering to this new would-be diet system, okay? Now, so I'll answer this in two ways. Vegan weight loss. The vegan curriculum that you need to adhere to, as far as food sources that are available that you have options from, simply will always be in a protein and amino acid deficiency, or simply they just don't have as many amino acids or protein as far as the other options. So if your goal is weight loss and you are adhering to a vegan or vegetarian diet, you absolutely will need to commit to some form of vegan or vegetarian protein-based powder or supplementation. So break your pens out for this one, because this is going to be something that you'll probably be able to implement for the rest of the questions as well. For women who are weight training or exercising, you will need 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight every day, consumed every single day, okay? 0.75 grams of protein consumed every day to create an environment where the body is comfortable letting go of existing fat stores, okay? If you have anything less than that, and oftentimes vegan and vegetarian systems are often in a deficit of protein, you are not creating an environment that will allow or send a signal for the body to let go of fat. Furthermore, incoming nutrients have more of a tendency to store as fat, okay? So it is absolutely necessary, if you are following vegan or vegetarian food systems, you have to get Vega 1. Vega 1 is one that I recommend for a lot of my clients, plant-based, high protein amino acid profile. I think it's like 26 to 27 grams of protein per scoop. So it's super, super packed. They even make unflavored, that only has the Vegan 1 source actually only has like 2 or 3 ingredients. So there's no ingredients that start with X and you can't pronounce or anything like that. So Vegan one is definitely one that I recommend, and a lot of my clients are using and having extraordinary success with. Branched chain amino acids. Amino acids are another supplement that I really, really recommend to vegan and vegetarian clients, because if you are, those of you who are implementing or following a weight training program or any exercise program, the first signal that is sent to the body in a protein deficit environment is atrophy, muscle wasting, muscle wasting, muscle wasting. Fact of the matter is, muscle is the most premium fuel in the body. You can imagine something that you might resonate better with is unleaded versus premium gas. Premium gas is your muscle. Your body wants to use it. If you're a high-performing weight training or exercise, if you are a high-performing individual who is asking a lot of the body, you will need amino acids to offset the fact that your diet simply is not supplying it enough amino acids to create an environment to build muscle and drop fat. So branched chain amino acids come in pill form or powdered form. And I honestly think that those are the only two supplements that really those who are, and again, working out or exercising, have to have. There's no question about it. And if you plan to weight train without these supplements, I'm going to save you a lot of time right now. You will not make any progress. You won't. And if you do, it'll be so obnoxiously slow, you're just going to give up. So definitely focus on 0.75 of grams of protein per pound of body weight consumed for those who are weight training and those who are exercising. Now, for those who are not planning on exercising or at this point really don't have the time to, about 0.60 grams of protein per pound of body weight is kind of the minimum cutoff, where we're still creating that environment where the body's like, cool, drop the belly fat. Okay, we can increase muscle or lean mass a little bit, okay? What else? Moving on to the next question. So how do I diet with so little time? That is a great question. And kind of to double back, I would say depending on how little time you have, intermittent fasting is a great way. The nice thing about intermittent fasting is you can kind of tailor it to what little time you do have. For instance, if you work a super long day, you can adjust that 16 or 18 hour window of fasting down to kind of coincide with when your schedule does finally open up to the opportunity where you can either cook your food or at least have the time to make yourself something to eat, okay? So based on someone who has very little time in their day, certainly to do multiple mini meals a day or graze throughout the day, just simply doesn't have the opportunity to, I would say make sure, carve it out, schedule it like it's a dentist appointment with the same severity or something that you would look at with the same sincerity of an appointment. If you go into each day knowing that since if history repeats itself, you're still not going to have a lot of time today, tomorrow, the next day, and next week, you have to look at your time. And I'm a visual person, so what I like to do is I'll actually write down my schedule. I'll have my clients that have the same situation, write down their schedule, hour to hour, minute to minute, and actually carve out, okay, here, I got a 3 to 3:30. I usually pee and poop on that time. I'm gonna have some snack, I'm gonna have some nuts on that. I'm gonna have Greek yogurt. And 3 hours later, that's usually when I'm running outside to grab smoke. No one should smoke. But that's also when I'm gonna have a protein shake. So if you schedule it with the same sincerity and look at it as something as serious as other things that have pretty much been carved out as staples in your day-to-day, you certainly have a better chance at taking them more serious. And if you ignore them, that's on you. That's your fault. Just stop ignoring. So that's my recommendation for people who don't have a lot of time. That's okay, because if you just truly dissect every single day, I mean, you could even go day to day and every week, obviously, if your days change throughout the week and your expectations and responsibilities, look at the days and times that you do have windows where you can either, if it's a small, short period, snack, because any of that is going to spike the metabolism, and that is huge. I mean, even if it's literally a fistful of nuts that you keep in your cargo pocket and just slam down, what you've done is you're stoking your flame, your furnace, right? And your body's going to be able to pull off of that for multiple hours after, which means increased metabolic activity, which means outgoing calories, and you're burning fat by putting something in. That's another thing that people get confused on is like, well, I just want to keep my calories low. Okay, well, by keeping your calories low, I'm going to put it to you like this. So we have a flame, right? Your metabolism is a furnace. It's a flame. If you put little kindling in, little small fuel sources in, you get a little expenditure. Little expenditure is certainly better than no expenditure, right? So if you don't stoke the flame with something small, almonds, just snacks, jerky, whatever, there's no flame. You're not eliciting any expenditure, right? So you're not burning any calories. The body is, from an evolutionary standpoint, the body is extremely lazy. If it doesn't have to do something, it's not going to. But the only way to force or manually flip that signal is to force it to. And you can do that by eating. So every time you eat, you're ramping up the metabolism, asking it to do its job. That furnace ramps up, and for hours, you're not even exercising, you're actually burning calories and burning fat, okay? So eating burns more fat than not eating, okay? Unless you're following an intermittent fasting diet, and we talked about that. Okay, I hope that answered that question. Next question is, what to add to a diet to improve mood or energy? Okay, so more often than not, people who are following diets that don't seem to be providing a sufficient amount of energy, comparatively speaking to their work expectations or what they have going on every day, oftentimes are not getting enough healthy fats. So healthy fats are a super slow digesting fuel source. They occupy massive windows of metabolic activity. Okay, not big surges, so you're not getting massive expenditure. So think big log into a big flame, that's big expenditure. But fats actually are like a slow burning log, okay? So you're getting slow to moderate caloric expenditure, but they occupy massive amounts of time, which will help balance your hormones, okay? So when we're talking about the hormones that either will piss you off or make you sad, or in your case, make you tired as far as energy levels, that's more often than not associated with a lack of healthy fat content, okay? So making sure that at least two of the meals a day, you're focusing on getting at least 20 to 25 grams of big healthy fat sources, nuts, avocado, cooking with coconut oil, MCT oil, things like that. And we can open up at the end for questions if you guys want examples for more sources, not cheese. So those are, I would say that's a good starting point. As far as otherwise, the second thing that I usually reference when I dissect someone's plan and they're like, I have no energy, I'm literally taking a nap at freaking 2 o'clock during the day, and I'm noticing that they are or have been compliant with eating a decent amount of healthy fat, usually it's because their total caloric consumption. If you're following an 1,100 calorie diet and you work an 11-hour shift, plus you got to go home and play mommy, yeah, you're going to suck at all of that. It's just not enough fuel that you're consuming to offset your total daily expenditure, your TDE, okay? So focusing on first making sure that, if you're looking at your existing go-tos, your existing diet breakdown, if it doesn't have enough healthy fats, I would start there. And don't just try it for a day and be like, didn't work, Andrew. Try it for a couple of days so the body can get acclimated, those hormones can kind of balance out. And then if you're still not getting enough, I would probably look to the total caloric consumption, or your total calories. I would count your calories and make sure that they're sufficient enough to offset your existing work schedule. Next question. I like this one because it's extremely thorough. Okay. What is wrong with my routine? Okay. So this person's day-to-day routine is this. They take vitamins, then they do fasted cardio, good job. And then they shower, smart. Then they have breakfast, then they have a supplement, then there's a 30-minute break, then they have lunch, then they snack, then they do cardio, then they do weights, and then dinner. Awesome breakdown, by the way. Okay, so the big red flags that jump out at me first and foremost. I would say that your supplements. Okay, so first off, you're doing cardio before weights, which does one thing. So when you're doing cardiovascular activity or cardiovascular forms of exercise, you are depleting the body's glycogen, which, smart girl, you have a snack before you work out, very good. You're basically depleting that fuel source before you're going into a form of exercise that requires that fuel source. So I'm gonna guess that when you're weight training, your output or your energy level or your strength probably is crap. And if one simple fix to this, honestly, the schedule's pretty good. But if you flip that and put the weight training first, because when you weight train, when you ask the muscles to do something, okay, the body pulls immediately from glycogen to shuttle to the muscle group that's being affected. It's a very effective fuel source. And your body breaks down into kind of like a sponge-like state where it's very absorptive to incoming nutrients. Another thing happens, insulin spikes, and that's your sugar shuttle bus. So as soon as your insulin spikes as a result of weight training, that snack and that lunch that you had now have a vehicle to carry the glycogen into the muscle. Problem is, if you did cardio first, you're depleting all of that glycogen or that fuel that you had right before, which was smart. But then when you go into the weight training, when you're asking the muscles to function, that's the only thing that they have to pull from. So you're either gonna have a crappy lift that's gonna be inefficient, or your body will be left in that sponge-like state and you're actually gonna be working backwards, kind of turning the wheels in mud, if you will. But other than that, and I rarely say this, your schedule fucking rocks. That's actually really, really good. I'm kind of envious by it. But make that change, honestly, make that change. And like I said, with the other thing, give it about a week for the body to adapt to it. And I guarantee in about 7 days, you're gonna report way better pumps, way better training. The weight trainer is just gonna feel better. You're gonna be able to go longer. Muscular endurance and muscular strength is gonna increase significantly. The biggest thing is, now that you have glycogen, by doing the weight training first and then the cardio afterwards, you're gonna have progress, which is a pretty big thing. Other than that, you rock, keep doing that. Oh, and a caveat question, can I have pork rinds and popcorn? Yes, you can. Pork rinds and popcorn, it's all about timing with that, okay? So I would say popcorns with a polyphenol. I would do pork rinds and popcorn immediately after you weight train would be the most opportune, just because when your body does experience that insulin spike, it is more apt to, or is more prepared to shuttle those incoming nutrients to whatever muscle's being trained. There's about a 90-ish minute window where, and I'm not gonna give you this as a crutch, you guys, and say that you can have whatever the hell you want after you weight train, but if you are going to have naughty foods, for those of you who are weight training, there is a 90-minute window to a 2-hour window where you can kind of get away with murder, as far as either more calorically dense foods, bigger foods, more consumed, and the biggest thing is carb dense foods. Like after I weight train, I will go smash just like a lumberjack slam, a huge stack of pancakes, and then I'll lose a pound the next day. So carbohydrate focused post-workout is the most opportune time to have your most carbohydrate dense meals, because the body is ready to shuttle those sugars and actually use them, okay? Next question, pre and post nutrition timing. I love this question. Pre and post workout nutrition timing. So leading up to a workout, depends what your goal is, okay? I'm gonna break it down that way. If you are working out purely with the focus of just dropping fat the fastest way you possibly can, going into the workout at a semi-fasted state, something like, half of an apple or half of a Nutri-Grain bar, something that's not necessarily going to satiate you to the point where you're full, but it is still going to be made available at some point during that workout to be used as fuel. But it's not going to be enough to carry you through the entire workout. Now, what happens when you tap that fuel source, when you run out, your body starts to reach and fetch for fuel sources. Now, what it fetches for and reaches for is existing fat. So you're turning your body into kind of like a fat burning machine by going into the workout either fasted, which if you do, make note of this. If you go into a workout fasted, it's going to suck. You have no fuel to pull from, and existing stored fat is not an efficient fuel source. It is slow burning. There's no quick response to it. So the quality of the workout itself definitely will be affected. if you are going into or choosing to go into a workout fasted. But the big pro is that you will lose fat probably twice as fast as opposed to going into a workout with a full day's worth of food. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you want to put on muscle, if you want to tighten, tone, lift, and sculpt, and kind of fill out those sleeves and add muscularity, you have to have fuel. So with pre-workout nutrition, I always recommend a medium digesting carb, okay? So carbohydrates are broken down into kind of 3 categories. You've got fast, medium, and slow. And they all break down and become available to the body as a fuel source at certain rates. Now, a fast one would be like a liquid carb, like if you were to do a Gatorade. It's pre-metabolized, it's digested, the body doesn't have to do anything. It's going to become available to the body within 20 or 30 minutes, okay? So that's a quick carb, but it doesn't last very long, okay? So it's not going to get you through your entire exercise. Now, a medium digesting carb would be something semi-digested, like oatmeal. Now, it's kind of broken down and the body doesn't need to do much work to do it, but it will carry you definitely through the entire workout, and you'll have an amazing workout. And I would say timing on that, personally, when I work out in the morning, I do oatmeal about 45 minutes to an hour before, and I notice that it really, really kicks in at the beginning of my workout. My workouts last usually about 60 minutes. And then you've got slow digesting carbohydrates like noodles, rice, breads, things like that, where the body has to do a lot of work and it takes a lot of time to break them down before they can convert and become available fuel sources, okay? So to answer your question, pre-workout food sources, and this is another common misconception. Everybody's like, I just do fruit before a workout. But the problem is fruit enters the body as fructose, then converts to glucose, which takes a lot of time. So fruit, although it seems like it would be a quick carb, that process for it to convert to glucose, or from fructose to glucose, takes a lot of time. So that actually by the time that you have that piece of fruit, if you're weight training, if you have that piece of fruit, it'll actually only become available to the body after about an hour to an hour and a half. But since the insulin is elevated after workouts, that sugar shuttle bus is going to bring it right to the muscle. So it's beneficial, but you won't get any benefit from having fruit immediately before a workout. You'll only benefit from it in that insulin window afterwards. Post-workout nutrition. Post-workout nutrition, if you are weight training, I always have to remember to talk about the people who are not weight training too, or not exercising. So with weight trainers, people who are weight training or doing any form of exercise, you want something quicker, but the best of the best would be something starchy like a white rice or a red potato. And those sound naughty and they sound very taboo. Certainly for those who are not exercising, don't ever do any of those. But when that insulin is elevated, your body loves the starches, okay? So white rice, cream of rice, even white breads, I can't even believe I'm saying that, but it's true. Anything white and starchy, your body loves that if you're weight training post-workout, okay? Because you get that big insulin surge. For those of you who are not working out at all, well, pre and post-workout nutrition doesn't really matter. So I hope that answers the question. Oh, biggest mistake that I see post-workout. Please write this down. Do not, under any circumstance, have a large, healthy fat source post-workout. Healthy fat sources counteract that insulin surge, which is your best friend, carrying the glycogen into the muscle, which repairs it and makes it grow bigger, faster, stronger. A lot of people are like, Andrew, I eat healthy. I have just like avocado toast and I have like avocado with my rice. Oh, that's just the worst. You're basically working so backwards. It's the slowest thing. The problem with this is when you combine a healthy fat source, we'll just say salmon or an avocado with something healthy like brown rice, that carbohydrate will take on the digestive components or characteristics of that fat, which is super slow, okay? So you're not even going to, within that small window after your exercise, you're not gonna get any benefit of that carb in the rice to fuel the muscle because it's being accompanied with a healthy fat. Do not, under any circumstance. You're literally sending a signal. It's like what sumo wrestlers do literally to gain weight. They have a crap load of healthy fat and they smother it all. It's coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, grapeseed oil, and they smother their white rice, pound it, and then they take a cat nap. That is the recipe for weight gain. Stop eating avocado toast. Stop doing salmon after your workouts. It's stupid. Don't do it. Any other time of the day, you're totally safe with that stuff, but there is one big bullet point I want you guys to take away from this. Don't have nuts after you work out. You just basically undid everything that you did in the exercise, no matter how hard you worked. You're counteracting your best friend, which is insulin, for about 90 minutes after that workout if you're having healthy fats. Only focus on protein and carbohydrates after you work out. Sorry, that got lengthy. What supplements to take? Now, I kind of am the perfect guinea pig for this because I have run the gamut. I'm a retired bro, but when I was a bro, I used to try and spend entirely too much money on supplements. And I would always give each one of them a good amount of time to make a necessary deduction of what do I see from the benefits? Do I see any kind of benefit from it? So since I ran the gamut of all supplements and ran them for an appropriate amount of time, I came up with a probably top 3 or top 4 must do no matter what, whether you're exercising or whether you're not. Okay, these indisputably and irrefutably you will have physiological benefits, and you will feel them, see them if you take them, okay? Fish oil. I don't know why I always tend to gravitate towards krill oil, just because of, it's my understanding, the jury's still out on this, but the absorption and the uptake of krill oil, it's the bioavailability to the body and the response to it is so much more significant than regular fish oil. If you want to do regular fish oil, it's totally fine. First of all, get the burpless stuff, or the, I think it's burpless. There's a specificity that's listed on the label. Otherwise, you're going to taste disgusting and your husbands are going to hate you because your breath is going to smell like fish. Krill oil doesn't have that. That's kind of why I like it too. So do the krill oil. Standard dosing, doesn't matter about timing, what time of day you do it. Be consistent with it. I would say that for those of you who have joint issues, knee pains, anything like that, probably could expect to see those either go away or certainly get better in less than 6 weeks of consistent use. It's unbelievable. I used to be a power lifter, and I seriously had the body of like a 70-year-old. I would ache and everything hurt. I started taking krill oil. 8 weeks later, I was as limber as a ballerina. It was unbelievable. Active multivitamin. Active multivitamin that lists each doses. No proprietary blends. You want to find one that has all of the milligrams. Otherwise, the ones with the proprietary blends have pathetic doses in them. And because it's not regulated by the FDA, they can literally put just a little trace amount in, and they can actually legally list it. So make sure that everything that you have on your multi, I recommend active because it has a lot of the active women's multis. They'll have things like glucosamine, they'll have joint support stuff, and they're just better overall. And their doses tend to be a little bit higher too. So women's active multivitamin. Probiotic. A lot of my clients, I'd say at least 40% of my clients, suffer from significant digestive irregularity or digestive problems, certainly when they're trying to start a new diet, just because of the incoming there's a change in food sources. It is unfamiliar to the body, so there's that adaptive period where you'll have some digestive irregularity. And basically, the best cure-all and remedy for this is write this down, 25 billion CFUs or better probiotic. You see all these commercials with Sigourney Weaver saying the women's proactive Greek yogurt. It has like 1,000 CFUs of probiotic, which is pathetic. It doesn't do anything. Please don't think that if you take Sigourney Weaver's active Greek yogurt, you're all of a sudden going to be pooping like clockwork. It's not going to happen. You need a minimum of 25 billion CFUs of probiotic taken daily. I would usually recommend taking it at the same time of the day so that everything kind of gets like clockwork, okay? Probiotic's huge. And it increases the rate at which your body breaks down and absorbs nutrients, so you're moving through things quicker and they're coming out faster. Protein powder, either vegan, plant-based, whatever, whey, egg-based, pea protein, God, there's hemp protein, there's a billion of them out there. These are for those who work out in any form, cardiovascular form or weight training, they're huge. And again, going back to achieving 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight through food alone is really freaking hard. If you weigh 150 pounds, for you to actually get that out of food, 120 grams of protein is just, you're gonna feel like you're freaking stuffing your face all too often. So these protein powders are really, really gonna help fill those gaps. And it could be something small. If you're not doing a snack in between breakfast or lunch and dinner, toss in a scoop and a half of the protein powder in almond milk or water. That could be the difference between you creating an environment where your body is comfortable letting go of existing stored fat or not at all. So I'm saying, make sure this is the easiest way to do it. It's in a powder form. You toss it in whatever liquid vehicle base you want. Shake it up, toss it down, boom, you're at 25 grams on top of whatever you eat with food. So that's probably the easiest way to get to that magic number of 0.75. And for vegans or vegetarians, 0.60. Next question. What to boost the metabolism with nutrition or supplements? Boosting the metabolism with nutrition is eating frequently. Going back to the metaphor of the flame, if you're not hungry, trust me that if you just start grazing or nibbling or having even something that has calories, like a protein shake, a smoothie, that is liquid-based, doesn't occupy much space, it doesn't satiate you, it's not as hard to put down. For those of you who are like, I don't eat breakfast, and I just haven't for years, it is impractical and unrealistic for me to say, okay, we'll just wake up and start having 2 whole eggs with 3 eggs white and a slice of Ezekiel bread. You're gonna be like, that's insane, I'm not doing it. And you'll take a bite and you won't do it. Start with something slow. The easiest way to increase your metabolism and to switch that manual switch is to start something small, just a nibble of something, a piece of fruit and a protein shake in the morning, boom. If you do that for 7 days, I promise you, pinky promise, that on the 8th, 9th, 10th day, you'll wake up like salivating for food. You will want food. And that's kind of when you transition into more of the solid state foods like eggs, oatmeal, stuff like that. But you have to teach the body first that this is what we do now before you get to the point where you actually are going to wake up and have an appetite, okay? So that's the easiest way to control your metabolism. You can control your metabolism based on what you put in and how often you put it in, okay? Now, with the intermittent, going back, and I'm sure a lot of you who are like, okay, well, what about intermittent fasting? Now, again, going back to conditioning the metabolism, although you're not gonna get much metabolic activity during the 16 or 18 hours that you're fasting, that metabolic surge that you're going to get when you do break that fast is enormous. We're talking huge, huge, huge flame. And it equates to roughly the same flame or same expenditure that those who eat multiple times a day get as well. So supplements, boosting metabolism, there isn't one. I mean, there are supplements that have things like cayenne. You know, there's some fat burners out there that have natural ingredients that will spike the metabolism. It is very temporary. You know, they're just chock full of caffeine, which is a vasoconstrictor, which is stupid, and it restricts blood flow. So I don't really believe in fat burning pills. CLA, you guys might want to write this one down. L-carnitine, it's amino acid. What it does is it frees up existing fat cells. It oxidizes the fat cells. So fat that is chosen to store as fat. L-carnitine will basically oxidize the fat cell, open it up, and all of a sudden for a short period of time, it becomes available again as a fuel source to pull from, okay? So L-carnitine is a really, really good one. I would say like 1,500 milligrams of L-carnitine can boost the metabolism and do a lot for natural fat breakdown. And it's not a stimulant, it's 100% natural. CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid, does the exact same thing. It teaches the body to start pulling from existing fat stores a lot easier. So CLA is a really, really good one. I recommend about 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of CLA per day over long or prolonged use. Studies usually show that belly fat is more often than not what those report long or extended period of use see change the most. So CLA has kind of a targeted focus on especially in women, fat loss. But it would take, don't hold your breath for it to happen in 2 weeks, or I would fully expect you guys would wait about 8 to 10 weeks before you start seeing things moving and falling off that you haven't seen come off in years. Next question, metabolic disorder, metabolics. So can't lose weight and has tried multiple things, low carb diets. For you, I recommend intermittent fasting. I hope it's convenient for your schedule, but intermittent fasting is an amazing diet for hormonal balance because it's consistent, it's routine. The body, it's very predictable for the body to understand when it needs metabolic activity and when it needs to shut down. So for menopausal, those users who are trying to figure out a diet that's going to work for you, and you are in menopause, I would say intermittent fasting is an amazing, amazing, amazing system to follow. But here's the key. You don't want foods that are rich in hormones. Like, I wouldn't say 2 of the meals that you have in that intermittent fasting window should be heavy meat sources, unless they're fish. And if you are having issues dropping weight and you are in menopause, 0 dairy. I wish there was a way that you could have it. Any foods that are chock full of hormones are pretty much going to stalemate your progress if you're having an issue with low carb diets. So keeping your protein high is still smart with fish and supplementation. Plenty of other food sources have significant protein profiles, but try to avoid, I certainly would say avoid red meats if you're having a trouble losing weight with that. Fish is pretty much the go-to and kind of a staple in that situation. What else? Next question is, what carb do I eat to feel full? Anything with significant fiber sources. I hope you like oatmeal. Oatmeal is massive. If it has high fiber, and we're talking 10 plus grams of fiber per serving, you are going to really like, as far as the satiating feeling and preventing those cravings. So I would say rices, oatmeal, sweet potatoes, things that have significant, and a lot of those things, a lot of people stray away from them because they're significant carb content. But
Andrew, I think you froze. Is anybody else able to view him right now?
are you guys back? I'm sorry.
You're back. We're back. We got you. Thank you.
I'm sorry. And now I'm tiny. I want to get big. There we go. I'm big again. All right. So yes. So foods with high fiber, just flip the label when you're at the grocery store. When you're debating between 2 food sources, always go with the one with higher fiber content. And going back to the rate at which carbohydrates break down, always kind of choose the food sources that break down at a slower rate. So Greek yogurts are a great snack, but they're a medium digesting carbohydrate with a decent amount of fiber. But that usually means that in about 2-ish to 3-ish hours, you're gonna be like, okay, can I have another Greek yogurt? So doing things like slowing the digestive breakdown of that Greek yogurt by putting, a little bit of granola or even oats inside will slow down the digestive, because it'll take on the digestive characteristics of that slower carbohydrate. Next question. When intermittent fasting, how do I get all of my daily nutrients? Good question. I would, and this is probably the biggest mistake, is because during that 16 or 18 hour window, when you are fasting, the metabolism is super, super low. There's not a lot of metabolic activity leading up to your window where you get to start eating. Now, because of metabolism, your flame is going to be kind of small people's biggest mistake is when they first break the fast is they have this super solid, calorically dense meal. Now, what happens when you take a big ass log and you throw it on a small flame? You smother it, okay? So you're actually further smothering your already low or small metabolic activity. So I always recommend when you're breaking a fast, do like a smoothie, like a couple scoops of protein powder, a little dash of cinnamon to control your insulin. That helps with cravings. Doing things like fruit. You can do unsweetened cocoa powder for a little bit of flavor. If you like your sweet, that'll be a good craving kick. A little bit of Greek yogurt, and finish it off with a little bit of almond milk. Blend her up in your Ninja. Toss it back. Because this is pre-metabolized, because you're blending, you're doing the job that your stomach is supposed to do by blending it up. You sip it down, you're getting all the nutrients. But what you're doing is, because there's no metabolic activity leading up to that break in the fast, you are slowly giving your body the chance to have less responsibility to break something down. So we're not talking about a big log on a small flame. We're talking about an appropriate size log on an appropriate size flame. Okay, so you're preparing the metabolism for your next meal. And when your next meal comes around, because your flame is now big and it's ready to receive the larger incoming nutrients, that's kind of when you start going into the more solid foods. Okay, so you still do want to come close to achieving the same total caloric intake in that window. I would always recommend to people start with a 16 by 8 intermittent fasting sequence for a couple weeks first. Get the body used to understanding that you fast for that long and eat with it for that long. And then if you kind of want to kick it up a notch or you're noticing a plateau from that, then I would transition into maybe an 18 by 6 math. That's fine. 18 by 6 format, where it's 18 hours versus 6 hour window. But you do still want to achieve, it can be 10 to 15% lower than what your total caloric intake is, or what it was before, and you'll still have, you won't have cravings or anything like that. But generally shoot for whatever you were doing before. If you're starting to implement an intermittent fast, shoot for about 10 to 15% less total calories than what you were doing before, and just kind of cram it in that window. But make sure you start with something pre-metabolized. Wean it into the more solid meal with a shake that has maybe 400 to 500 calories. Okay, and then maybe a small solid snack, kind of again leading up to your bigger meal to finish it off, in the form of maybe 250 to 300 calories. And then finish off with something larger, but because you're finishing with a larger meal, and you started with the slower, more pre-metabolized food sources, your body is going to be totally prepared to burn that as fast as possible. Okay, so that's the best way to follow an intermittent fasting system.
Hey, Andrew,
yes,
we are running out of time, so I wanted to share with you a couple of the live questions that we received, just so you can answer some of those. What is the best diet for someone who needs to lose a lot of weight, like over 100 pounds?
Oh, great question. So what I would do is total up the total amount of calories that leading up to starting this diet you usually have been consuming. And it's okay if you can only come up with a ballpark. Just kind of write down what you tend to gravitate towards breakfast, the food sources, the quantities, the sizes, toss it into a food calculator. Do that throughout your entire day. Come up with that big number, whatever that number is. And what I would do, just so you don't say screw it, a lot of people make a mistake, and this is such a good question, I like this one. A lot of people just go from, I have a lot of clients that will come in and they're like, I've tried everything. I was eating 3,200 calories when I started, and I tried the 1,200 calorie diet, and for some reason I just, screw it, it was impossible. Well, it's because the net difference between what you were doing and what you now have committed to, that is insane. Your body quite literally does think it's starving, and you will say F this eventually. So what I recommend is find that number, what you're usually been doing or what you have been doing, and every 2 weeks, I would start by chopping off about 250 calories from what you usually do, and every 2 weeks, pull another 200 to 250 calories, and that slow progressive rate will not only be so much more practical, and it won't really feel like you're starving yourself, but you're going to get it to a point where you can lower it down to, in roughly 6 to 8 weeks, down to that 1,500 calorie target, which is probably the healthy number where you should be, depending on activity level. And because you did it slowly and progressively, you're not going to want to punch somebody because it's that miserable. So find the number. That's the easiest way to start. Find the number, what you usually have been doing, and don't exaggerate or embellish. If you eat pizza and you like zebra cakes and nutty bars, factor it in, because you have to have the key for that to succeed, and that's a good question, is you got to have the starting number, what you have been doing to get you to the point where you are unhealthy or you needed to lose this significant amount. And from that number, do a slow tapering response of every 10 to 14 days, pull out about 200 to 250 calories and continue that sequence until you get to the number that you'd like to get to.
Great, thank you. If you intermittent fast, can you do breakfast only instead of dinner, or can you change? Can you eat a different meal on different days? For example, dinner one day, brunch on the weekends?
Absolutely. As long as you stick with that sequence, again, going back to the pattern, and for the body to get acclimated to the intermittent fast, as long as you do, like if you have a designated day, like you like to go have brunch with friends on Saturday, as long as that Saturday is always the day and the time roughly that you are breaking that fast, the body can also understand that that's a part of the fast, okay? The big problem is the unpredictables. It's if you're perfect and then on Wednesday you screw up on lunch and then also on Saturday you have that brunch, your body has no opportunity to pick up a sequence or a pattern to work to your benefit. So yes, that's a great question. Yes, you can be human. Yes, you can have friends and socialize and go out. But you have to pick a day, and more often than not, you really have to try and stick to that time and that day as you follow and adhere to that intermittent fast.
Awesome, thanks. Our last question says, do you have any recommended books on nutrition or exercise?
Not the internet. Nothing, don't Google anything. I would say, honestly, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still will sometimes comb through YouTube channels, and something as simple as and generic as nutrition do's and don'ts, and find usually people who have a decent amount of subscribers that more often than not is a decent bearing or gauge of whether or not they have validity in what they're saying. Actually, I was thinking about starting a YouTube channel myself, but when I do that, I will let you guys know. So with books, it depends if you have, food sensitivities. I would hone in on the ones, that are very specific to whatever intolerances or sensitivities or celiacs or any of the things that are specific to your disposition. Hone in on those first and foremost, because if you have issues that don't have overlap to the curriculum or the content that you are reading, none of it is going to have overlap to anything that you are going to be able to practice. So, God, that's the first no I don't that I can come up with. I don't really have any go-tos. I have all of mine through my CSM and nutrition certifications, but that costs way too much to get those books. But honestly, I would just comb through some of the YouTube food and nutrition specialists. Most of their names escape me now that I'm put on the spot. But I tell you what I'll do? I'm going to, after I'm done today, I'm going to put together a little bullet point list of some of the content, either video or the books that I think are probably the best places to start. Is that okay?
That's fantastic. That would be really great. Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, I'm going to sneak in one more quick question that just came through, and it said, can you have coffee in the fasting period? Black with no sugar, no milk?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, if you accompany it with, I don't really know if I should recommend this, but if you accompany it with a baby aspirin, it actually helps with the fat facilitating process. So if you have a baby aspirin with 8 to 10 ounces of purely black coffee, those two accompanied kind of create this symbiotic relationship with oxidizing fat. So during the fasted state, that is an awesome combination. Maybe just start with coffee. I don't know if it's a reckless prescription for me to say take baby aspirin. That's just what I do. But coffee is absolutely okay and will not affect your fasted state, and you will burn pure fat if you do so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was really great. Tons of information. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, how can they find you? Where can they contact you?
So I can either send you, well, you can feel free to shoot out my email and my contact info if you'd like to. I'm totally comfortable with that. And we can I can take it from there. Or resolutefitco.com, or if you're on Instagram or any of the social media platforms, what is my company? Resolute _ somebody else does this for me.
Andrew, if you want to put it all together, I'll send all the attendees.
Okay,
I'll send a post attendee email for everybody with those links and your contact information. Thank you again for taking the time today. This was awesome, and I hope everybody has a great day.
See you guys.
Thank you.